Good day, folks. This is a special event in our series of health nuggets. And the format we're using today is question and answer, frequently asked questions. And we will take about 30 minutes in this session and answer as many questions as we can in those 30 minutes. So I'm very glad to be with you again, and there are many more coming, and we are building a great library for you to log into when you want to re-look at these shorts. We find when people are introduced to natural healing, they are disoriented, so they ask many questions. So today I'll kick off with the most frequently asked questions and then give our best answer we can to that. So the first one we have today is, what is live blood analysis? This is a typical device for looking at live blood. It has a video camera in it that you can relay to a big screen or a computer, and then capture it or show the patient their own blood on a big screen. It was developed by a guy called, I'll think of his name just now. It's a German scientist. And what he found was that live blood contains many, many more information bits than what you see in dead blood. And since blood only lives 20 minutes on a slide, more or less 20 minutes, the typical pathology lab looks at dead blood. It's the same as doing a post-mortem. There is good information in there, like hormone counts and cholesterol and so on. But when the blood dies, a whole lot of information just disappears. So by looking at live blood, we can get a better idea of the dynamic of the blood. It's very popular in the world now. It's in most countries, and you can get the training is not so difficult. It's not a diagnostic. It's an assessment of the quality of the blood. And over the years, I think this technology must be about 80 years old. The cameras and things have got better, but the actual device is still, we get newer and newer models, but microscopy is not a new science in the world. It's been around more than 100 years. So what we see in live blood is the dynamic. The blood actually moves on the picture, and you get a good idea of what the white blood cells look like and the other components in the blood and the platelets and so on. You can also change the resolution, so you can zoom in and out and get a broader picture, or you can zoom into a cell. I like using up to 4,000 magnification. Then you get a nice picture. You can see the color of the blood. And lo and behold, sick people have bad-looking blood and healthy people have good-looking blood. And blood is very much like gardening. We don't see people who have accidental good blood. They're doing something wittingly or unwittingly to make their blood look better. And so I rate the blood on a percentage scale. That person who invented the live blood, who discovered it, was Gunther Enderlein. He was a scientist in Germany. And then it branched into America, and the top teacher there was Michael Coyle. And I'm still trying to find out. He died under mysterious circumstances. One of my students went there to study under his personal tutelage, and she came back and relayed all that information to me. This was long ago, maybe 22 years ago. And so to this day, I use live blood. It's quick. It takes less than 15 minutes, and you get a good idea of the quality of the blood. And why we so focused on the blood services the whole body. Every cell in the body is dependent on the nutrition it gets from the blood. So by looking at blood and seeing the quality of the blood, we can then work out with other analysis what we can do to improve the blood, or what's causing it not to be good. And it's fascinating. People love watching their own blood, and they take photographs of it. And we see changes as well. I've got textbooks with traditional pictures in them of blood and aberrations. And we're seeing new things now, which we've never seen before, since about 2020. And so we'll have to update those textbooks and the training to accommodate all the new phenomena. So just to, you can see a lot about live blood. There is, with all these natural healing technologies, there's always a group who will criticize it. And that's okay, we're used to that. So any new good thing on earth gets criticized. You know what, the people used to go on witch hunts and stuff. So that's the way of the world. Good things are often criticized, so I don't worry about that. So I trust that gives you a good insight into it. There's very technical information in textbooks and websites and so on, if you're interested. It's also quite an easy technology to learn for a newcomer. You don't have to be trained as a doctor or a pathologist to look at blood. It's like learning a new skill, and it's not very complicated. So I hope that gives you an introduction to it. I use live blood analysis for every single patient, because what I've learned is if the blood is not good, the patient won't get better. And then you're just treating symptoms. So the first stop on any person is to get their blood condition better, and then it will have an influence on every cell in their body, a positive influence. So I trust that's a good introduction for you. And I apologize for getting Enderline's name, but fortunately I remembered. So, on to the next question today. What is SQUID? SQUID is a device. It's quite expensive. It was developed in Budapest, and it used to be known as a quantum zeroid device. And it's all over the world now. It's now about 25 years it's been around. I got my first SQUID device in 1999, and I was trained in it in Budapest by the developer. And what it is, it's a resonant frequency device. That means it measures the frequencies in one's body. And the name changed from a quantum zeroid machine to suit European requirements. It was changed to SCIO, SCIO, and SCIO is the Greek root word for knowledge, and that's where the word science comes from in English. So it's a scientific device. It's very strange to people who work with chemicals and mechanics, because it's not a chemical mechanical device, it's a resonant frequency device. In the medical world, something similar to that is an MRI scanner. It works with frequencies, and I think a human is actually a frequency creature. So the best definition I have of a human is an exquisite creation of frequencies. And then it makes sense to use a frequency device to measure what's going on with that human's frequencies. And that was very difficult until the advent of computers. Until about 2000, the computers were too small to run this technology on. I think we had Pentium 1s and 2s then, and when the Pentium 3 was launched, the SQUID could run on it. In a limited way. That's when I got my first one, and the laptops cost a fortune. Then they've become very much cheaper now, but now I see that you get expensive laptops again. That's besides the point. So if you think in nature, where can we see something similar occurring? It's everything, bees and insects all work with frequencies. And there was books written on it long ago, and the scientific community have not understood it well, but the discoveries have been made. So, for instance, a bat The bat can catch an insect as food in pitch dark while they are both moving at a high speed. And what that bat is doing, it's sending a frequency signal out almost like a Doppler effect or a radar. It gets an echo back and it analyzes the echo. But it does it many, many times a second. It's astounding, the frequency of that. Even the whales can communicate at great distances with each other with frequency, with sound. Sound is a frequency. So if a human is a frequency creature, it makes sense to use a frequency device. And there are many types in the world. The SQUID is, I think, one of the most sophisticated ones. And there are variations on the SQUID as well. And they're quite expensive. But even a thing like a beamer bed, it's regulating or normalizing the frequencies in one system and gives you relief. So if you think of a human mind and spirit and thought and emotions and the psyche, it's all frequency. It's not tangible. Just like the area between us, there is air, you can't see it, you can't touch it, but it's there. What is it? And just recently, Professor Pollard has indicated how light creates energy or life when it interacts with water. It's fascinating. Professor Pollard, you can watch his explanations on TED Talk. So the mainstream science is still lagging behind this. They're still trapped in the scientific paradigm of chemistry and mechanics, and the Cartesian model where they try and reduce everything to its particle, and they miss the point of the bigger picture. So by reducing everything, it's called reductionism, to smaller and smaller parts. There's a joke about that. It says a specialist is someone who knows more and more about less and less until they know everything about nothing. And then they lose the big picture. So it's called the holistic or holism concept as opposed to reductionism. And I think these resonant frequency apparatus and devices address that shortcoming in what we have in science at the moment. And the same thing happens when we address the difference between cause and symptom. So we'll answer that question later. So that's an introduction to resonant frequency device, and the one I prefer is called the SQUID. And I'll move on to the next question. So that is, where does phytotherapy slot in? Phyto means plant and therapy means treatment. Where does that fit into our world of healing and wellness? So humans have used plants before anything else. From the beginning of history, humans have used plants as medicine, and it's known as herbalism, or the scientific word is phytotherapy. And I think the Eastern countries or cultures have got the best history on this, on herbalism. I think our forefathers, maybe 3-4 generations ago, before the advent of sophisticated pharmaceutical drugs, they were using plant medicine as well. Things like castor oil and all the wheezing and cheesing stuff that we use for. But there are big scientific models around phytotherapy. The Chinese have 4,000 years of knowledge packed into their literature and science around phytotherapy. So I'd say if you want to treat yourself with a balanced scientific model, use Chinese medicine. And even in Indian culture, they use Ayurvedic, which is a mixture of pharmaceutical and mechanical and plant medicine, plant-based medicine. In my experience and research, I think really the only safe therapy means treatment. The only safe therapy there is in the world is phytotherapy. All the other man-made drugs are scheduled and have side effects. They're not useless, but they can give instant relief and even save lives. But it will not heal anything. The plants have some, I think, mysterious method of correcting what's wrong with the tissue or that cell. And how does that work? I think we're back to frequencies again. So there are whole libraries on herbalism, and the Chinese have proven it over time, and so we don't have to check it out first. It's been checked out. The challenge is to find a practitioner who understands phytotherapy. And if you use Chinese medicine, I would go to a Chinese doctor because they're trained in it. I know one of my colleagues is a medical doctor, but he's been studying Chinese medicine now for 16 years, and he says it's ongoing. He hasn't finished it. But at least he's spent some time learning the ins and outs of it's very complex. Just like human is very complex, and human variation is unending. I've seen one scientist, Roger Williams, he said, what's normal in humans can vary by 400%. We're talking of shoe size and pulse and blood pressure and blood readings. What's normal for one person is not normal for the next. And that is the diversity we get in human genetics. It's enormous. And I'd like that, because if we were all the same, it would be quite boring, I think. But it makes healing very challenging, and wellness, because the practitioner has to try and match the therapy to the profile of that patient, and that's what the Chinese excel in. I'm not saying all Chinese medicine is good, because the Western model has crept in there as well. And many Chinese doctors are trained now in what I call drug medicine, and you can get both of them in China. So, if I had to give the two best or the three best therapies that will heal a human, it's their mind. In other words, what we think and what we eat, and what therapies we use. So I'd say, if we think the right way and eat the right way for that individual, and we use the right medicine appropriately and at the right time, then that's the best we can do. All the others are not as good as that. All the other therapies, you hear people of doing all sorts of things, jumping into ice baths, and you don't know what all. I like the idea that is also voiced there in Romans 12 verse 2, says that you will be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Not you, your whole life is transformed just by a change of mind. So that's the profound influence it has on us. Of course, if your mind is aligned correctly, you will also use the correct food, and you will use the correct therapies. That all springs from the mind. So I don't want to get too esoteric about it. So we'll get on to the next question now. We've got about 10 minutes left, and that is, where can I learn more about cancer? Well, cancer was not such a big deal, say like 1940, that's 80 years ago. It wasn't such a big deal because it occurred, but not much. So if you look at countries who kept statistics, like UK have quite good statistics on cancer, it has increased multifold. And of course, diagnostics have got better, but definitely the cancer have got worse, especially with tangible or visible cancers like breast cancer. It's not that subtle. You get a lump and then eventually the lump erupts through the skin. So women initially find out there's a lump there or a discomfort, and then if it is cancer, it will normally develop and then become severe. So I've been around the block with cancer. I've read about the politics and all the controversies and the discourse in the scientific community. And eventually, you need a perspective. You need a broader view of the whole thing to understand it and see where does medical treatment fit in, where does diagnostics fit in, what are the causes of cancer. Some are nice and uncomplicated, like smoking. Smoking is directly linked to lung cancer, and some other cancers are linked to industrial things like asbestos. But those are easy. How do you explain somebody who gets an aggressive skin cancer and it spreads like wildfire, and the other person gets the same cancer and it doesn't spread? Those are all mysteries of cancer. And just from a commercial point of view, cancer is a very big industry. I've got a book called The Cancer Industry, and it explains the numbers there and how many, more or less 3 people in the world make a living from every 1 patient who's got cancer. So it's quite lucrative as well. But to get context means to see where does it fit into the bigger picture of world health and your personal health and your personal future. I've seen some very good organizations that give you the perspective and context right. The one website is called cancertutor.com, and the other one is called, it's by an author called Bollinger, and it's called The Truth About Cancer. So it gives you good perspective. If you go to the very narrow mandates of medical science, they tell you they have 3 therapies, which is surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy. And those are what I say, the toolbox is rather small, and it doesn't address the cause, it addresses the cancer. So I think if you're confronted with it, you or anyone close to you, loved one, it's better you're better off if you have the context right and to see the bigger picture. Otherwise, you just listen to one view of the whole thing, and the medical view is just one view. It's the biggest one, and the most, well, in the Western world, it's the biggest one. So you even get people who have spontaneous healing. So the whole mystery of cancer, it's not solved. It's really not solved. There was a book written by Professor Krebs, and he published it around about 1971 when President Nixon declared the war on cancer. To this day, they've lost the war. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. Some scientists say 1 in 3 people will get cancer in their life. And so it's a big issue in the world. Krebs said, he wrote a book called A World Without Cancer. And what he had discovered was your innate cancer-fighting ability in your body. You don't have to get external help. And he actually read his paper to the American Parliament, and then the whole thing just disappeared. It just got disappeared off the horizon. So that's how politics work and money and so on. But I don't want to dwell on that. I just want to tell you that and there was another scientist who found out that cancer is caused by oxygen starvation. And so the next step is to find out what caused the oxygen starvation. And he actually was awarded a Nobel Prize also long ago, and for his discovery. So between Krebs and the other scientists who discovered the cause of cancer, I think we have a lot of promise still for other scientists to pursue that direction. So I think that would give you an idea of how to deal with cancer. In my opinion, you must get the context and the bigger picture right. Otherwise, you'll fall into a very narrow mandate with some therapist or other, or some movement or other, and then you don't have the access to all the other help that you can possibly get. So we'll do more cancer talks in future, and types of cancer. And the next question is, why are there forbidden cures? Did you know that? There are proven cures that are forbidden. And a lot of politics around that. I've got a textbook by a doctor from Brazil. His name is Mark Circus. Not with a C, with an S. So it's not that type of circus. He's written a book called Forbidden Cures. And because he's sort of working off the radar in Brazil, he's mainly dealing with indigent people, very poor people, squatter camps and so on. He's a Samaritan, he helps people. And all his medicines which he's discovered that have major impact on people have been dismissed or banned just across the border in America. In the USA. So why on earth would something be forbidden? Even the skier machine was banned in some places. I think now of Dr. Thomas Levi. He found out how to literally cure cancer in one day, COVID in one day. And his cures have also been forbidden. So why I'm mentioning this, there are major politics and money and things running around to the extent that a thing that works is forbidden. Normally it's because it either opposes an existing lucrative therapy, or it clashes with some agenda, political agenda, where the agenda wants people to be sick actually, and this thing might interfere with that agenda, then it gets politically or legally forbidden. And it's not the only book I've got. I've got another book called Racketeering in Medicine. It's astounding to see how many things have been banned. Scientists have lost their jobs, lost their occupations in academia, because they dare question the what shall I call it, the dogma of the day. I call dogma the hiding place of idiots, because when you form a dogmatic group, no one can question you, and you can get political muscle to shut them up if they dare criticize you. But that's a topic for another talk. All I can tell you, there are many forbidden cures, and fortunately now with internet you can get hold of the information. There's a scientist called Andreas Kalker in Germany. He's made many videos on probably the best antibiotic on earth. The problem is it's dirt cheap. So it's also banned, and Kalker has to operate under the radar. But his videos have gone viral. Why? Because they work. So I want to encourage you to look beyond the dogma of the day and realize that we don't have the best information we should have. If there is an agenda, which there are many agendas in the world, political and financial and global agendas, if one questions it or opposes it, you are apt to get seriously wrapped on the knuckles. And you might even lose your job or lose your occupation in academia or get threatened. So the world we live in now is one with a big silent majority who have their doubts about things, but they have no voice. They can't voice it, otherwise they get in trouble. And you have this small elite group formulating these agendas, and they are not allowed to be questioned. They don't allow it. And so I call that the dogmatic approach. And really, dogma is a hiding place of idiots where they go and cluster together and no one can question them. So it's not a debate anymore. You're just not allowed to raise even a question. So that's the world we live in. So we have to learn to manage it and do the best we can in spite of that. So until next time, if you like the question and answer sessions, we can repeat it. But in the meantime, we'll go back to our 5-minute gem nuggets of wellness. So until next time, bye-bye.